Hi, and welcome to this course on how to go further with advanced HTML, CSS, and building a responsive website. My name is Kevin Lehtla, and I'm a front-end developer and a web designer. I will be teaching you on how to set up a live server, use SCSS and SASS, whichever you're comfortable with, showing you how to improve your workflow using Emmets and shortcuts inside Visual Studio Code. After completing this course, you will know by looking on a design or a website and know how to replicate it or create it by using your own code. So, if you're interested in learning more, stick around and I'll see you in the first video. So, to write our code, we obviously need some sort of software to help us. Unfortunately for us, we have a good selection of text editors with a lot of modern features to help us with that. So, let's go over a list of the best text editors out there, in my opinion. The first one will be Atom. Atom has a beautiful interface. It supports both Mac and Windows. It has a Windows and Mac comment tools built in. It also has package manager built in, so you can add some add-ons if you want. Also, you can customize the colors, add themes, and just play around with it. The second one is Brackets. Brackets features inline editors, live preview, pre-processor support, and it also has extensions, so you can use Emmets, Beautify, and Git. In terms of the design, I would say it's pretty similar to Atom, so you can choose that if you want. The third text editor is Sublime Text. In terms of the features, you can customize it to work almost the same as Brackets or Atom. But the reason why I switched was because setting up live servers or trying to find support for the plugins was close to non-existent. All in all, it's a good text editor, but there are better ones out there. The fourth is going to be Notepad++. Notepad++ is a free open source code editor with a dated design in my opinion and old features. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but if you really want to, you can use it. The fifth and the last one is going to be my favorite, and the one that we are going to be using throughout this course is going to be Visual Studio. Visual Studio features include, but are not limited to, built-in interactive debugger. It doesn't stutter or lag. It has a built-in Git commands and Emmets for the auto-completion of the code, and a very nice send mode in which you can hide all your UI and focus only on the code. It also has tons of add-ons, and not to mention, you can change up the UI in so many ways. So let's get started and download Visual Studio. If you're using Mac, your buttons will be a little bit different on the website, but make sure to choose the Visual Studio Code, not anything else. Install the software to your computer, and I'll see you in the next video. After you have installed Visual Studio, you're greeted with a welcome message, from where you can either create a new file, open a recent one, get help, or even customize Visual Studio itself. So let's click the tools and languages. This can also be accessed by clicking the extensions tab on the left side of the Visual Studio. We are going to want to find 6 add-ons that we're gonna install on the Visual Studio. The first one being Material Theme. You can actually use whatever theme that you like, but I personally use Material Theme as I love the colors that it has. So let's type in Material Theme into the marketplace. Click on it and press Install. I have it already installed, so I only have option of disable and uninstall, but you will have to install it. After it has installed, Visual Studio will most likely prompt you to restart the Visual Studio, but you can ignore it for now as we're gonna install quite a few more add-ons. The second one is going to be the Material Icon theme, which is gonna be below that Material theme that we have already searched for. So install that one as well. Now the third one will be Live Server. So search for that and install that onto your Visual Studio. The fourth one will be Live SASS Compiler, because we're going to be using SASS to compile our code into CSS. Now the fifth one will be Beautify. And it's actually an optional add-on. You don't have to install it, but if you want to keep your document clean, this is a really simple way to do that. After you have installed all the add-ons, make sure to restart your Visual Studio. Now, if you don't see any changes in the UI, go into the view, choose Command Palette, and type in Theme. The first option, Preferences Color Theme. In here, you will see a list of themes you can change to. I'm currently using Material Theme High Contrast. If you like how my Visual Studio currently looks, you can change into the High Contrast mode, but you can also change to any other theme that you like. With the software now out of our way, we only have to set up one more thing, and that is SASS. So for that, let's create the folder that we are going to start making our whole project into. I'll be naming that folder as Learn Advanced HTML. You can name it into whatever you want to, so that doesn't really matter. Then you want to open the Visual Studio as a project inside that folder. So right click and choose on the menu Open with Code. That will open a new Visual Code into your PC. So inside that, you're going to see that there's a folder named Learn Advanced HTML. Inside that folder, we're going to make a new file and name it as index.html. We're also going to be making a new folder. And that folder is going to be CSS. Inside that folder, we're going to be making a new file called main.css. We're also going to be making main.SCSS, and that's going to be our SASS file. So now that's done, let's choose index.html and start editing that. Using Emmets shortcode, we can make our HTML file a lot faster. So type in exclamation mark and just press tab. This will create the base of the HTML file for you. Let's just name the title something that you want. I'll name it as Advanced HTML Course. But again, that doesn't really matter. So the most important thing that we want to do is add a link to that CSS file that we just made, but not to the SCSS because that is going to be used in a different method. So again, type in link, choose the third option, which is going to be the CSS, and just change the file to main and also redirect it to the folder CSS. Now that you have done that, because we installed the live server before, you're going to see two options underneath the Visual Studio. One is Watch SASS, and the second one will be Go Live. We're first going to be pressing the Go Live, and this is going to be opening your local host in your default browser. For mine, it's Chrome. For the sake of this course, I also suggest you to be working in Chrome, as that's what I'm going to be using. And now I'm going to split the screen into two parts, one for Visual Studio and one for the Chrome. So just press Windows and right key and choose Chrome. Now I'm going to move the Chrome more to the left side and make room for the code. We're going to choose the main.scss file to make sure that the SASS file is working. So let's create our first variable. If you don't know what that is, it's just a value that you can define and then use in multiple places all over again. So let's first make a comment. And variables always start with $sign. So let's write that down. And now let's make our first variable. Let's name it as yellow and assign it a value. And that value can be whatever you want. It can be a string or it can be a number and so many other things. But for now, we're just going to name it as the hexadecimal number for the color of a yellow. So that's going to start with EAD3, 1, and F. And let's end it with a semicolon. Let's make another variable. That variable is going to be black. And 0A, 0A, 08. And another variable. And that variable is going to be our main font. That's going to go into our site, and that's going to be Roboto. So now that's done, let's actually test and call out our first variable. In the body tag, we're gonna be writing background, and we're gonna assign that background the variable that we just made. That's gonna be the yellow one. And the font family is gonna be the main font. So let's save. Now, because I forgot to press the watch SASS button below, we have to press that. This is gonna generate us a new file called main.css.map. And if you go over into main.css, you can see that our CSS file has been populated by our new code. And you can actually see that our background now has the value that we have in the yellow value in the variable. So we can see that it's working actually. Now your browser should auto refresh it, but I can see that I actually made a mistake in the spelling here. So I'm gonna just save that. Remember, you can save your document by pressing Ctrl and S. And now you can see that our website is with the yellow background. So now you can close your main.css file because we're gonna be making our styling in the SASS file. So now that we have the SASS set up, let's talk about a bit more in depth about both SASS and Emmets and how they make our lives easier and faster in terms of coding. And let's start with Emmets. What is Emmets basically? Emmets is essentially a collection of dynamic snippets that you can write in your document that will generate that piece of code that you want for you. And it's not limited to only CSS or HTML, so bear that in mind. So what does that all mean? Let's say you want to type a heading in your HTML document, and this is how you would do it in a software without Emmets installed. Let's say, for example, in Notepad. So let's write the heading. See, it already ended my H1 tag, and that is also built into the Emmets. So I can't force to not do that. And let's say we're gonna call it as this is a heading. Now, an easier way to do that is actually writing H1 and pressing tab. And this is also going to do that for us. Now, the second thing we can do is we can also write in what we want before we end the tag. So let's say H1, and we are going to go into this is a heading inside the curly brackets. Go to the end and press tab. Now this is going to do the same thing for you. Now let's write the paragraph using a lorem ipsum snippet. So I'm going to do the P, press tab, and inside that press lorem and tab. And this is going to generate a whole paragraph of text for you can use. And let's see it in action. So again, I'm going to push the Visual Studio to the right side and the Chrome to the left side. Now you can see that this has made us this heading and the lorem that we just made. So let's go a little bit further, and let's say we want to make a list of elements that we can use. By the way, you can go to the next line instead of going with the mouse to the end, pressing enter. You can go to the next line by Control Enter. Now let's write UL list. So this is how we would do it in the long way. So inside that UL, we're going to have list element, and inside that list element, we're going to have href. Actually, let's just keep it with list elements. So we want to have 3 list elements. Now, how can we actually make that even faster? And this is how we do it with Emmets. Instead of doing how I just showed you, we are going to be typing in UL, and inside that UL, we're going to have a sign, and what's going to go inside that? And inside that's going to go list element. And now what Emmets allows us to do, we can calculate how many of them do we want. So we're going to just multiply it by 3 and press tab. Now see how fast that did it for us. So let's go even more further, and let's write, let me just delete the first part. Now let's say we want something inside that list element. like some text. So let's go again and write UL. Inside that UL, we're going to have list element. And inside that list element, we're going to have text called this is a list element. And now we're going to multiply this by 3. See? Just remember, if you actually do it like this and you backspace or you go somewhere in here and you want to change something, let's say we want inside that list element to be hey, and inside that a is going to be this is a list element. If you press tab in here, it's not actually going to do the same thing. So remember, go to the end of the line and press tab in here. So you can see that inside that list element we have 3 hey hrefs. Now let's correct it. So inside a list element, we want to have the word this is a list element. And inside that list element, let's remove the curly brackets and just put do a. And that a is going to have a type of link. And that's going to be multiplied by 3. So you can see already that there's an Emmets abbreviation on the right side that will show you how it's going to be looking. So if you press tab, this is what it's going to generate for us. Now, I haven't covered of classes and IDs, but we can actually do it the same way as we're going to write UL and with the class of upper list, for example. And if you press tab, now that upper list is going to have the class of upper list. And if you don't want the class, you can just write with the hashtag UL class. Sorry, ID. So now that ID is going to have the value of ID. So let's say we want to make a text box, a hypothetical thing. So we're going to start making a div, and that starts with the period. And period allows us to write the class name instantly, creating the div. So let's say text box and tab. Now, what if we want something inside the text box? Let's make inside that text box, we want to have a h1 that is going to have the word of this is a heading. And underneath that h1 is going to be p. And how do we do it? We write a plus sign. That's going to go underneath that h1. So there's going to be p with some kind of text. And now if you want to multiply it, you can do that, but let's just press tab and see how that looks. And as you can see, I have just generated a text box with h1 and p inside that. A much faster, much easier way. So if we multiply it by 3, this is how it's going to look, because we are now multiplying the paragraph by 3. So now what if we actually wanted to make 3 text boxes? So how do we do that? We are going to do that by using the round brackets. That's going to go over the text box, and that is going to be multiplied by 3. And now if we go to the end of the line, press tab, you can see that now we have 3 text boxes with all the same stuff inside that. Now, if we go into the CSS file, we can actually do the same thing similar to that one. So let's say we want to have some kind of padding to our body. So instead of writing padding 50 pixels, saving it, we can actually do it as P, which is for padding, and writing 50. So you can see that Emmets is showing us that this is going to result of padding 50 pixels. Let's press tab. So now that I have briefly covered Emmets, let's go over into the SASS. So we have already started making the variables, and we have used those variables in the body tag. So let's go a little bit further. Instead of always writing the variables in the top part of our CSS file, we can actually do it this way. So we're going to declare a padding. That padding is going to have the value of 2m. And if we put exclamation mark global next to it, we can use that padding in every part of our CSS file instead of doing it as padding 2m. So let's remove that. And let's use the same padding in here and call it padding. So if I've saved now, you can see that our document is now with the 2M padding. And if I don't have the global tag in here, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that if we write a P and create a padding, and we're going to use that padding that we declared earlier, it's going to also have the padding of 2M. Let's write in here that we can also define variables in global scope inside a selector. And then we can use those variables in here. So what does the global scope mean? It means that if I remove that global right now and save and refresh the page, because sometimes it doesn't refresh. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't save the HTML file, so let's save that. We don't actually need it, but let's just save it. Now we're gonna have the file with 3 headings and the padding in the text. So if we save the CSS file or the SASS file, this is what's gonna happen. It's gonna lose that padding because we don't have the padding declared variable in here in the global scope. So if we put that back and save, now all of our paragraphs are gonna have that padding because we just made it global. What we can also do is we can do some calculations in our variables. So let's say we want to have the padding minus 1M, we can do that. So now our paragraphs actually have 1M of padding. Or we can even multiply it by, let's say, times 3. Now our paragraphs have 2 times 3M, which is 6M, and you can see it in the inspect element down here. Now let's go briefly over maps. Maps are basically a collection of variables inside one value or variable. So let's define a map and make a comment first of maps are defined as such, and type in a variable called, let's say, my colors. It can be whatever you want to name it as. And then we're going to type the round brackets. And inside those round brackets, we're going to be making 3 different types of variables. So let's say the first one is dark, and that's going to be a color. So that color is going to be COC425C. The second variable is going to be red. That's going to have a value of C54254. And the third value, weight bold, for example. It doesn't really matter. You can have a lot of different things in there. So let's use those values in our paragraph. And I'm going to make a new one. I'm actually also going to remove this huge padding in here. So now we want to use those colors that we just made. So let's type in color. And how do we get the values from the map? We have to map-get with the round brackets, and inside those round brackets we're gonna write the name of the map, which is my colors, and the value that we want to pull from there, which is dark. So now that we save it, we can see that our text now is dark blue. So let's say we want to also make that text bold and take the value from our map. Let's type in font weight. Actually, let's make it faster. So you can actually do it like FW, which is font weight, and type in map-get round brackets, my colors, comma, weight, and save it. Now all of our paragraph text is bold. And this pretty much covers all the information you need to know about SASS in this course, because we're not going to be using very advanced techniques in here. We're going to be using most of the intermediate or basic ones. Also, if I have gone over something too fast, I have linked the resources in the description below, so you can read about SASS or Emmets a bit more. Now that we have all the basics out of the way, we can actually start creating our site. As you can see, I have Adobe XD opened up, which is free by the way, so you can also download it. And you can access all the exported files and the design by downloading it in my course project files. So I have created both the desktop landing page and the phone landing page. And as we're going to be making the website in the mobile first solution, we're going to be making the phone landing page first. So let's start with creating the HTML file first. And let's push the XD to the left side and again the code to the right side. So now that we have that, let's zoom into the phone landing page first and let's try replicating what we have in here. So let's delete all of our HTML that we had before inside the body tag. The first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to add some resource into our HTML file. The first thing is going to be the font awesome, which is going to allow us to have a lot of icons in our disposal. So let's go into the docs, actually start using. So in the start using, we're going to be copying our the link in here. This is going to be copied into our HTML file. Now the second thing we're going to add is mini reset. So find that from the Google. Choose the first option. Save as. And save it into the CSS folder. Now the third thing is slick carousel. So Google that as well. Find the first option. Go into the usage. And from here, copy this part. Now remove the comment because we don't need it. And change the file paths to the CSS. Because this is where we're going to be putting our files. Now copy the JS part from the website to the end of our body tag. Indent it behind. And also change the file path to JS. Now let's go back out into our website and choose the get it now and download the file. From the zip, we're going to need to get 3 files, one for the JS and 2 for the CSS. So copy the slick.css, slick.js, and slick-theme.css into our folder and put the JS file into the JS folder and the CSS files to the CSS folders. Then go back into your HTML document and let's actually add the mini reset as well. So type in link, choose the third option, CSS, choose the CSS folder, and in here you can see the mini reset.mini.css. And now put it below the font awesome by Alt and arrow key up 2 times. And now we have all of our resources put into the HTML document and we can start creating the actual HTML for the website. If you have not done that yet, press the watch SASS in your Visual Studio and go live. This is going to open the local host in your browser. We can also close the other ones. And let's go back into our HTML file and let's actually start creating the content that we want. I'm going to open up the XD for our design and see that the first thing that's going to be on the phone landing page is the header. The header is going to have the logo, the title, and the actual navigation button. So this is what we are going to be creating the first. So let's create a div with the ID of my site nav and the class of mobile nav and tab. Now inside that div, let's create a tag with the href to JavaScript void 0. Basically what that's going to do is it's just going to allow the button to be unclickable, or it's not going to do anything, with the class of close button and the onClick event of close nav. And inside the A, it's going to be at, if I can find it, at times and comma. So to the next line, it's going to be image Inside that image is going to be resources logo.png, and the alt tag, it doesn't really matter, but let's put it to logo, and the class name of menu, logo, and logo. Save it, and you can now see that there's a logo in our HTML document. Now let's add 4 hrefs with the different names inside those. So it's going to be A with the href of a hashtag and times 4. And in each of those, it's going to be a home, about us, case studies, and contact. Save it. Sometimes it doesn't refresh, so you can just manually refresh it yourself. And now we have the list in our index document. Also, we don't need sidebar in our Visual Studio, so Control B, and also close the debugger below, so we have more room to work with. Now let's check our design, what we're gonna need to do next. The navigation that we just did is a navigation that's gonna pop up when we click on the menu on the mobile view, and it's not gonna appear on the desktop. So after that, we're gonna have to create a main with the ID of main and the class of main. Not really necessary, but that's how I want to do it. And another one is going to be a header. Inside that header, we're going to have a header left. And inside the header left, we're going to have a span with the class of mobile menu, an on-click event of open nav. And inside the span, it's going to be an I with the class of FAS, FA bars, two classes. You put them together with the period. Bars, click tab, and now we have the span done as well. So the next one is going to be an image with the resource of resources. Resources, and logo png with the alt tag again with the logo and the class of menu logo, and after that there's gonna be a span with creative ibot. Now if you refresh the site, or it's gonna auto refresh for you, unfortunately it doesn't for me, you can see that there's 2 logos. Now we don't have to worry about that, because later on in the CSS we're gonna be hiding them and making them actually look nice. So let's go forward with the HTML. Now below our div in here, we're gonna be making a right side menu. So let's name it as a class with the header right, the UL of class desktop menu, and inside that menu we're gonna have 4 list items, again just like in the side nav, by typing in li a with the href to the hashtag and curly brackets of home and times 4. Now we're gonna have to put the normal brackets around our code to make the list multiply by 4 times. So do that, go to the end of the line and press tab. Now we have 4 list items with ahref inside those. Change the home of the second ones to about us, the third one to case studies, and the fourth one to contact. This is going to be our desktop menu. Now the last one will be with the class of button, border, and 2 hyphens of outline, and save it. Now let's put some spacing in where our main tag ends. And let's actually start writing the content inside the main. So type period content. Inside that content, we're gonna have all of our main sections, which will be the first section, the second section, the third section, and the footer. So let's write those out. Let's start with the first section with the class of section, section1, and the class of desktop, fh, which is desktop full height. Inside that div, there's gonna be a wrapper that's gonna wrap around the content with the f full width. And inside that wrapper, there's gonna be a text box. Inside the text box, there's gonna be a h1 with keep your agile line break workspace organized. And you can see it in the design. And below the h1, there's gonna be a paragraph. And we're just gonna generate some lorem into that. And then after that, we're gonna have a tag of class with the button gradient, and read more. Now the first section is done. Let's go over into the second one. Add the space out because this is where our content ends here. Save it and to the next section. First, it's gonna be section2 with the class of desktop full height, tab, wrapper, and text box with text center. Inside that, we're gonna have a h1 of what do we do? Question mark. The h3 with class of h3 with the class of color blue. Agile thinking is the new cool thing. And underneath the h3, we're gonna have a paragraph of, let's say, we have years of experience that we can use to bring you totally unique and customized agile working strategy, semicolon, working with you to decide what will work for you and what won't. Period. We understand and appreciate that each client is different. Period. Now Control Enter, go to the next line. We have a mistake here. Go to the next line and then start a new div. Go below that and let's start writing our services. Those services are in here. You can see the connecting users, analyzing data, and creating solutions. So let's make a services list grid. This is going to be a grid item. Now this is where it's going to get tough because we're going to make 3 of the same types of grid items with the same texts and the same classes. So let's start with writing period services list with the grid class. Inside that class, we're going to have to get a services underline item with the class of text center. Inside that, we're going to have 3 divs. The first div is going to be the services underline icon. Inside that icon, we're gonna have an icon with the class of FA and the class of FA users. Then underneath the services icons, we're gonna put the plus sign to go under the next line. Class of services, service. In here, the same thing. Remove the S, service, underline heading. Inside that heading, there's gonna be a paragraph with text of connecting users. Let me make the Visual Studio larger. Now, the last line below the service heading is gonna be a div of service, underline text, with a paragraph inside that one. And for that, let's create the lorem ipsum below because we can't create it inside our curly brackets. So let's go below, type lorem, and copy to the comma, before the comma actually, inside the curly brackets. Now we don't have that. It's good. Let's remove the lorem ipsum. And now, because we want to have 3 of the same service items inside the list of grid, we're gonna put this part inside the normal round brackets. Put this to the end of the line and times it by 3 and press tab. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. So let's go back, and actually we have to put the curly or the round brackets around each of our divs. So we're gonna put the first div into the services side, which is gonna be happening in the service.icon. The second one is gonna go to the service heading, and the third one is gonna go into the service text. Now, if you have done that, go back to the end of the line, remove and type in 3 again, and press tab. Now you can see it generated us the whole HTML. Now, I don't like using so much space, so I'm gonna remove the paragraph spacing in here. Same for here. And I'm gonna do it to all of the same divs. Sorry. Remove this one. And the last one as well. So now we have all of the classes done correctly, and all we have to do is change out the paragraphs that are now going to be different. So for the second heading, it's going to be analyzing data, and for the third one, it's going to be creating solutions, and save. We don't have to look at the HTML document now because it's going to be broken anyway, because we have not added any CSS. So let's just go to the next section and make the third section. So let's check where it ends. So the section ends in here. Let's type a new one with the class of section and section 3. Inside that's going to be again a wrapper. Inside the wrappers, there's going to be a text box with the class of text center. Inside that, there's going to be a h3 with the class of color, 2 hyphens, blue, and with the text of check out hour. And underneath, there's going to be a h2 with the latest case studies. Now, after that, there's going to be another wrapper, and it's going to have the class of wrapper.fwv, for the full width. And now we're going to do the same thing inside that wrapper. We're going to be generating a lot of the same case studies inside that. So let's start with writing out the case study class, case studies. And this is going to hold, let me show. This is going to hold all of our case studies that we see in the Adobe XD. 1, 2, 3, until like 5 to 6 items. So now inside those case studies, we're going to have item of case study item. Now this is going to have to be inside the curly brackets. Inside that, there's going to, after that, there's going to be a case study underscore number with the value of $, because that $sign is now, every time it's being multiplied, it's being changed. So it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until forever, how many times we multiply the whole snippet. Let's put a space to the end of our line to know where we are. Now plus case study underscore date with 24, 12, 18 inside that. This is also going to be in the curly brackets again. So highlight it all and curly brackets. And after that, there's going to be another plus sign with the class of image overlay. Inside that image overlay, there's going to be image with the source of, let's put the hashtag for now, and class of case study image. And also put the new curly brackets. The round brackets. And then we're going to have to times it by 3. Press tab. Now we have 3. Let's go back. Let's actually times it by 5. Let's make 5 of those. Now you can see that all the numbers have been changed with the pound sign to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's change the image sources to the correct ones now. So the first one is going to be resources and pixels, and choose the 3, 7, 4. Now the alt can be study 1, doesn't really matter again. Now the second source is going to be resources, pixels, choose the first one. Third one is going to be resources, pixels, and the second option. Fourth one is going to be resources, pixels, first one again. And the fifth one is going to be resources, pixels, and 1, 4. So now we have done all the items. Below those items, there's actually going to be a div. So right after the second div, there's going to be a div with the ID of arrows and the class of arrows, and press tab. And this is now the third section done. So let's move on to the footer. Now for the footer, we're just going to write footer. Inside that footer, we're going to have a div with the class of wrapper, with the class of text box inside that. Again, inside that text box, there's going to be h3 with stay connected with us. Paragraph of here is a list of our social media sites you should follow. Now, below that text box, there's going to be a new div with the class of footer list. And inside that footer list, we're going to have a UL with 4 items. Now we're gonna use Emmets again with 4 LIs with A, href to hashtag. That's gonna have the I with the class of FAB and the class of FA, Facebook. And we're gonna have to put this side into the round brackets and times it by 4. Now let's go back and change the second one to the YouTube, the third one to Twitter, and the fourth one to Instagram. And that's footer done. So now I think we have all the HTML covered. You can refresh the page and you can see that it just doesn't look very good. So we can now move on into the CSS. Now, before we are going to start making our CSS, I want to go over a few things. One of those will be that there are going to be few changes in terms of our CSS design on the website and Adobe XD design that I have made already. As for example, I'm going to have the services with the opacity 0.7 background, as well as to keep your agile workplace organized. Other thing that I want to clarify is that you can see that on the phone landing page, there's going to be a button that opens our menu. This is going to be the side nav that we made in the HTML. On the desktop, though, there won't be any buttons. There will be just a normal navigation menu. Another thing that I want to go over is that I have made some changes in the HTML, as I have added few comments on where our sections start, where our menu starts, and where our footer starts. So it's just for you to understand as what we have just written as far for now. And few changes I have made is that I forgot to actually write the icons into the correct ones. So in the services icons, the first one will stay as FA users, but the second and the third one will change. And they will change to FA chart line, and the third one will change to check circle. And you can see if it refreshes, our icons here have now changed. I also suggest you to open your Adobe XD design and have it close to you, as this is going to be the reference that you're going to be designing from, and I won't be constantly opening because I have it already open on my second monitor. Now let's move on to the CSS. I'll close my unnecessary windows, open the SASS file, and we're going to be cleaning up our document until the variables, because now we're going to be adding few more and then starting with our SASS file or the CSS. So let's write a new variable called blue. That blue is going to have the value of 3D 9 BE5, and another variable called pink, and that is going to have the value of D025F9. Okay, and one more is going to be a wrapper. This is going to be the wrapper that's going to contain our website in the desktop, and it's going to be applied later when we go into the Meaty queries, because as we're doing the mobile first solution, we're starting with the mobile. You can also, on your Chrome, click on the inspect, choose this button, and you will always see the mobile view. Click on the mobile L425 pixels size. Okay, so go back to the SASS. The SASS or the wrapper will be 1040 pixels, and that concludes our variables. Now let's start with our body tag. In our body tag, we're going to be assigning our font family. You can also write it as F and press tab, remove the serif, and write Roboto inside the strings. Now we're going to be styling the H1, H2, and so forth. H1 will have a font size of 2 ems, margin bottom of 20 pixels, font weight of bold, save it. The H2 is gonna have the value of font size of 1.8 EMs and a font weight of bold. Okay, now the H3 is gonna have a font size of font size of 1.5 EMs and a font weight of bold. Paragraph is gonna have a margin bottom of 20 pixels, and the A tag all around our website is gonna have a text decoration, a none, and that's gonna remove the underline in our A tags. And if I save it, you can see our A tags now don't have the underline because we're not gonna be using any underlines in our links. Okay, let's go over to the header. Scroll back up and create a small comment, header area. And now we're gonna be writing in SASS or CSS style way. So mobile nav, it's gonna have a height of 100%, width of 200 pixels, position fixed, because we want the mobile nav to be fixed on the phone. Remember, we are styling the phone first. We're not actually making the desktop right now. We're gonna be making a Meaty query later that's gonna change the values for the desktop. So transform of translate. And if you don't know what translate in itself is, translate is basically the same as writing code for something which is like position absolute and moving it with top, left, right, or bottom, how many pixels you want it to. But it's much better in terms of web speed, and when you animate it, it's not gonna have stutters, and we're gonna be needing this only because later on when we make our mobile nav or the side nav, it's gonna have to move with it. So the set index is gonna be 1, so it's always gonna be on the top. From the top down 0, from the left 0. Background color is gonna be our variable pink. Overflow is gonna be for the X hidden. And the padding is gonna be from the top 60 pixels, and transition is gonna be a transform for 0.5 seconds. Now, instead of writing in the normal CSS, from here we want the mobile nav with the logo to be targeted. We write in the SASS inside our mobile nav. We go to the next line, we make a space, and we write logo. And this is gonna do the same thing as it's gonna target our mobile nav logo. And I'll show you later how it works. So let's color it with white, the text to be white, the margin to be auto, the text decoration to be none, the display to be flex, because we're gonna be positioning it, align items to be center, and both the justify content to be also center. And from the margin bottom, we're gonna add 40 pixels. Now we're not gonna be seeing any changes because we are not gonna have the clickable button yet, but I'll also show that later. Now, the next we're gonna be typing is A, not inside the round brackets logo, and this is gonna target every A tag inside our mobile nav which is not with the class of logo. For the padding, we're gonna add 8 pixels, 8 pixels, 8 pixels, and 0 pixels. And this is gonna be from the top 8 pixels, from the right 8 pixels, from the bottom 8 pixels, and from the left 0 pixels. It goes clockwise. Text decoration is gonna be again none. The font size is gonna be 25 pixels. The color is gonna be white. The display is gonna be block, and the text align is gonna be centered. And transition is gonna be 0.3 seconds. Now, for the close button that we just made in the HTML, it's gonna have a position of absolute. From the top, it's gonna be 0. From the right, it's gonna be 25 pixels. The font size is gonna be 36 pixels, and the margin left is gonna be 50 pixels. Now, before we go forward, I want to write a few lines of JS to make our side nav work, hopefully. So let's press Ctrl B if you don't have the Explorer already open. Go in the JS folder and let's create a new file called script.js, and let's write a few lines of code. So we're gonna be writing 2 functions for the side nav, and the first function is gonna be open nav. We're not gonna have anything in the parameters. Document get element by ID. It's gonna target our my side nav, and it's gonna style it with transform, with translate x curly or round brackets 0 pixels, and document get element by ID. This is gonna target the main, our content, the margin left equals 250 pixels. So what is this essentially doing? This is so that when we click our side nav button, it's gonna open a new menu from the left side, and it's gonna push all of our content to the right side, 250 pixels. Now, this is only the first function which is gonna open the nav. We also want the close nav. So let's write a second function, which is close nav. Round brackets, start with the curly brackets, document get element by ID. Again, my side nav. Style transform equals translate x round brackets minus 250 pixels. And document again get element by ID, targeting the main class of our HTML document and styling it with margin left of 0 pixels. Let's save it and see if it does anything. So if you go into your browser and you click on the navigation button with the bars, you can see that we have a menu that opens up, and it has a pink background, it has the main navigation, and it has the logo. And this is mainly for the phone, which we're gonna be hiding later on in the CSS. So with that done, let's continue writing our CSS or the SASS. After our close button, we're gonna be opening a new main, and inside that main, we're gonna be writing transition margin left for 0.5 seconds. This is gonna animate the movement of our main class when we open our site navigation. Inside the main, we're gonna have header. The header is gonna have a position of absolute, the width of 100%, the padding of 30 pixels, the color is gonna be black, and the C index is gonna be 10, which means that the position absolute is gonna absolute our header, and the C index is always gonna be on top. Now let's go forward to header left. This is gonna have the display of flex and align items of center. The header right is gonna have text align center. Now, I guess I made no error. Now logo, let's style our logo. The logo is gonna have the width of 45 pixels, the max width of 100%, the margin from the left side is gonna be 10 pixels, and margin from the right side is gonna be 10 pixels. And just to explain, we can actually write margin. So when we go from clockwise, we would say from the top 0 pixels, from the right 10 pixels, from the bottom 0 pixels, and from the left 10 pixels, instead of writing how I just did in 2 lines. But I do it both ways every time. It's a habit. So let's go even more below and write the desktop menu. Sorry, I made a misspelling here. My desktop menu. Now we finished writing our mobile left side of the navigation. Now let's move on to the desktop menu, which is gonna have a display of none, because on the phone it's not gonna be displayed, and later on in the add media query we're gonna display it by block to show it. So the font weight is gonna have a bold. Inside the desk menu it's gonna have the list elements to be inlined. The margin is gonna be to the right 25 pixels. Inside that, don't forget the semicolons. Inside that li, or the list element, we're gonna have the A tag for the color of variable black. Opacity is gonna be 0.7. You can actually write it with 0.7, or you can remove the 0 because it's actually not necessary. And then we're gonna be making the A tag to be hoverable. So press enter, and we're gonna do it with typing at colons hover opacity 1, transition opacity 0.3 seconds, and ease. So now we have done the desktop menu and the mobile menu. Actually, we have to put the mobile menu below here. Mobile menu. It's gonna have the font size of 1.6 EMs. And now we have the mobile and the desktop menu done. So in the mobile, it works like this, and later on, this part of our menu is gonna be hidden. Now I can see that the menu has few mistakes. So let's check on our problems tab in the Visual Studio. Let's also hide the left panel to make more room for us. So we're missing a semicolon. Okay, margin left. This is gonna be like that, and save it. Refresh it. And yeah, okay, now we have our heading done. Obviously, our first section is on top of our header because it's positioned by absolute. But if we start actually coding the sections, you can see it's gonna fix it by itself. So before we start coding our section CSS, I want to make few BEMs, or actually classes, that we're going to be using throughout our HTML. And you can see what these BEMs are. For example, in the HTML button 2 hyphens gradient is going to be a class that is predefined, and we're going to be reusing it instead of or just assigning a class to our HTML classes. So for the section, I'm gonna have a generic height equals 100%, the width equals 100%. The position is always gonna be relative, and the padding for the sections is gonna be 30 pixels from the top to the bottom and 0 pixels from the left and to the right. The background is gonna be repeated by now, and we're gonna be making the wrapper. So inside the section there's a wrapper, and the wrapper is gonna have the margin of auto. So we are going to center our wrapper inside our section. It's gonna have a padding of 0 pixels from the top to the bottom, and then 10% from the left and to the right side. So, and the height 100%. Now, if we save it, we can see now our document has a padding all over our content. But we actually have to do one more thing, because if we go back into our HTML document, we can see that we have a wrapper with another class of full width, or FWE in short. That is a class that I generally use to reassign into wrappers or sections multiple times. So let's write that, and with the @ sign and period FWE with the max width of 100%. Now, another predefined class that we're going to be making is the text center, which is for text align center. Really simple. Then the color of 2 hyphens blue is going to have the value of color variable blue. Another button with the border of 2 hyphens outline, and this is existent in our menu part. So if we go in here, we scroll into our contact. This contact link is going to have a different border, and it's going to have the outline border. So we're going to be making a class for that. So the border is going to be 2 pixels solid and pink. The border radius for it is going to be 50 pixels, and the padding is going to be 4 pixels, 25 pixels, vertical aligned to the middle, and the transition is going to be all 0.5 seconds and east. And for the outline, we're also going to have the hover effect. So at hover, background is going to equal to pink. So we're being changed the outline to the background. The color of the text is going to go to white instead of being the usual color. The transition is going to be of all 0.5 seconds and ease. And if you save it, you're not going to see a lot of difference, because the thing is, our menu on the mobile is hidden as we did it on the top here. The desktop menu is displayed as none. So if I actually make this larger and go even further, so it's beyond 767 pixels is the point where our desktop menu is going to be appearing when we add the @media query. But right now our code is not changing because we're not done yet. So let's write another class. It's gonna be button 2 hyphens gradient with the border radius Actually, let's make it faster. Border radius of 50 pixels. Text decoration with none. The color of white. The background image. Now, why are we adding a background image to our gradient? Because this is a new thing in CSS that we can cheat the system to actually add a gradient into our button that is defined as a background image. So the linear gradient is written as such, and inside that linear gradient we're saying from what point to what point are we showing it to. So we are going from the left to the right, so to right, and we are starting with the blue color from the 0%, the pink color from the 51%, which is the center, and the blue of 100%. And the background size is going to be 200% auto. And what this is going to do is when we actually hover our gradient button, the gradient of the center is moved to the right side, so to the end of our button, and on the hover it's being pushed back to the beginning, so it feels like it's a animation. Instead, it's pretty much a cheat. We're cheating the system. And the transition of 0.5 second ease. Also the padding is 8 pixels and 20 pixels. And for the gradient, we're adding a hover effect, which is the background position is being moved. So this is now where we change our animation from the right to the center. Transition is going to be 0.5 seconds ease. Now, you can see me, I'm writing a lot of transitions, 0.5 seconds ease. So if you want to do it, we can actually add a variable here. As I didn't do it before, we can add a variable called transition and assign it a value of 0.5 seconds ease. So instead of writing it everywhere, we use the 0.5 seconds ease, we can actually go back and change our transition in the outline, for example, and put it to transition. The same goes for here, transition, and the same goes for here, and here. And with the control, we add 2 of those. So it's gonna be transition. Okay, actually it didn't choose the earlier one. So again, let's write transition here. And if we save, we're still gonna have the same result. But of course, we're not gonna be seeing that because again, we are not showing the desktop version right now. It's gonna happen later. So bear with me. Now that we have the predefined classes done, let's move over to the sections. So on to the first section. Let's write the comment. This is where our section 1 starts, and this is the above the fold area. Okay, section 1. Section 1 is going to have the background image of URL, 2 periods, hyphen, resources. Press enter. You can choose the Visual Studio and choose the phone landing and semicolon. The background position is gonna be center and top, and the padding from the bottom is gonna be 680 pixels because we want a lot of room for our first section to be shown until we show the second section. Now let's write our wrapper. The wrapper is gonna have the display of grid. If you have not learned about grids, I strongly suggest it because we're gonna be using grid a lot. So the grid is gonna have our content aligned to the center and align items to center as well. And this is actually a workaround for our older browsers, because older browsers behave differently when it comes to grids, and we also have to make a workaround if it comes to Edge or it comes to Explorer. The next is going to be the text box, which is inside our first section, and the text box is going to be positioned relative to our section. It's going to have the margin top value of 100 pixels. The background is going to be RGB 255, 255, 255, and the opacity of 0.9. The border radius is going to be 8 pixels, and the padding is going to be 30 pixels from the top to the bottom and 5 pixels from the left and to the right. If we save it, it gives us an error, so let's save it again. Let's see if there's any problems. No problems. Let's refresh our server. Okay, we can see that our section 1 is actually missing the background, so let's try and fix that. So let's close our responsiveness on the Chrome and open our inspect element to check on what's missing or what's wrong, as in the folder we don't see anything wrong with that. Let's try and remaking our live server. Maybe that's the case, just so seems like that's not the case. So let's check our output of what our SASS gives. So we can see that our SASS is having an error with our transition. So maybe there's missing letter. So line 164 is in here. So it's transition. Let's check the earlier. Okay, so we can say that our earlier line of code is having a misspelling. So transition. Let's resave it. Okay, there's still an error. Okay, let's check our first variable. Maybe I made a misspelling in there. Okay, yeah, we made a transition, not transition. So we're getting an error everywhere where I made a misspelling. So let's go back to line 199. On the line 199, it's giving us that our background, okay, our background is actually missing RGBA because the last value is alpha. It can't be RGB. We have one more value. Okay, and now if we it automatically refresh our site, we can see that we have our background here with a very nice spacing to the next section. So that's good. Let's move on to the next one. Let's start creating our section 2. Let's comment section 2 and type section -2. Inside that section, we're not going to have any CSS. So type text box. That text box is going to have a margin from the bottom of 40 pixels. Inside that text box, we're going to have the H1 being margin bottom. So we're basically resetting it. We're putting 0 pixels because remember, on the top of our CSS, we made all of our H1s being margin bottom 30 or 40 pixels. We are now resetting it because we don't want any margin there. And the H3 is going to have a margin bottom of 30 pixels. So the next one, the background element, which is, I'll show you. The background element is this one. So that background element is now being positioned absolute. And it's going to have a set index of -1, which means that if we want to click on something, then the C index -1 is putting our element behind our content that has the C index of 0 or above, and the left of -50%. Let's save it. And we can see now that our background element is behind our services and it's not taking the space that we want. Let's move on to the services list. The services list is gonna have an immediate child of service underscore item. That service item is gonna have the margin of 10 pixels and 0 pixels, a padding of 20 pixels, 50 pixels. Okay, seems like the Emmet didn't work here. Padding of 20 pixels, 50 pixels. The background, again, RGBA 255. Let's press enter because we already have it written here. Let's remove that bracket because that was unnecessary. Order radius of 8 pixels. Now inside that service item we have more items. One of those is service underscore icon. That icon is gonna have the width of 186 pixels, which is the image size. The height is gonna be 150 pixels, 145 pixels, I'm sorry. And semicolon, margin is gonna be auto, so we're gonna center it. The background is gonna be URL, 2 periods, hyphen, resources, and bubble 2 times the size. The background is gonna be repeated with no repeat. It's gonna be displayed as flex, and that flex item is gonna be justified to the center, and the items inside are gonna be centered as well. Now inside that service icon we have the icons, so we're gonna style those as well. The color is gonna be white for the icons. The font size for them is gonna be 3 ms, and the padding is gonna be 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 5 pixels, and 12 pixels. So from the top 0, from the right 0, from the bottom 5 pixels, and from the left side 12 pixels. Okay, so now that's service icon done. Let's go from the yellow bracket to the next line, which is service underscore heading. The font weight for the heading is gonna be bold, and the font size of that is gonna be 1.3 EMs. After the service heading, we have the service text underscore text, and that's gonna be opacity by 0.7. Let's save it. And we can see that our text is now slightly less than black. I just generally prefer putting dark colors into opacity rather than gray color, because if something's behind that, it looks nicer. So now we have the section 2 done. Let's move on to the third section. Let's scroll down and see how that is. So section 3. Wait, let's actually comment as well. Let's type section 3. So the section 3 is gonna have the overflow of X being hidden, because this is gonna be made into the carousel using the slick that we just put into the HTML. We can see in the bottom we have the slick being applied as a script here, and the slick is gonna have the CSS applied from the top of our HTML document as well. Now the arrows after the section is gonna be displayed as a grid element with the width of 50 pixels and the grid template columns being 1 fraction and 1 fraction. The float is gonna be to the right side, and the padding bottom is gonna be 60 pixels. Now let's go and write the slick previous, comma, slick next. And those classes are taken from the slick carousel that is being applied later on if we make our jQuery. So after we finish the section 3, we're actually gonna be going back to the jQuery file, JavaScript file, and we're gonna add the carousel in there, and then it's gonna look a lot better. So let's go forward with the sleek previous and the next one. Those are going to be positioned initial because the code that is being applied by the team CSS of Slick, we don't want that. We're going to be changing that. So from the top, 0. From the width of those elements is going to be 20, and the height is going to be 20 as well. The padding is going to be 0. The at elements of those, both for before and before, because we're applying that before to both sleek previous and the sleek next one, so comma, and again before. Those elements are going to have the color of blue, the opacity of 0.5, and transition, because we made a variable before, transition. Now let's write from the purple curly bracket slick, previous, the hover of the before element. So basically when we hover the slick previous button, it's gonna change the before elements styling. And the same goes for the slick element of the next, hover before of the opacity 1, and the transition is gonna be transition. So what does that mean? It means that if our buttons are initially gonna be 0.5 opacity, if we go over those buttons with the hover, it's gonna go back to opacity 1. Okay, so let's move on. Let me just put that smaller here because we don't need so many space being taken away. Let's go and write our case studies, because now we are done with the arrows. The case studies is going to have the margin from the top to being 20 pixels. Moving on, the case studies item inside the case study is going to have case study underscore item is going to have the margin from the top being 15 pixels. The position is going to be relative, and the margin is going to be 40 pixels and 15 pixels. So we are now basically styling our case studies in here, and we have made our heading correct. We have made all of our other parts of correct. We are moving on to the number and to the date that we have in our case studies. So let's write the number case study underscore number, position it with absolute, because this is going to go on top of our case study. From the right, it's going to be minus 5 pixels, and from the top, it's going to be calculated of 50 pixels, 50%, I'm sorry, minus 60 pixels. The font weight is going to be bold. The color is going to be pink. The font size is going to be 80 pixels. And the C index is going to be 3, so it always stays on top. Let's save it and check. So we can see that our number is on the right side of our case study all the time. Now let's move to the date. Case study underscore date is going to have the same things as positioned absolute. It's going to go from the bottom, minus 25 pixels. The font weight is going to be bold again. From the left, it's going to be 10%, and the color is going to be blue. The font size is going to be 50 pixels, and the C index again is 3 to make sure it's on top. Let's save, refresh, just Remember, you can always save with Control S if you didn't know that before. So now we have our date on top of our case study, and all we have to do is making the image. So the case study image itself, study image is going to have a border radius, a very small border radius of 4 pixels, and the image overlay for the whole thing. So after the blue bracket, remember, is image overlay after element. So what we are doing right now is we are adding dark overlay with blue color on top of our case study image. And we did it in the HTML. If we go back and scroll into our services, case studies, there's an overlay div that is covering our image. And it was done because we can then add a color on top of our image. So if in the future we want to add some kind of text, it's going to be much more visible and much more readable. So that after element is going to have the content of 2 strings to make it appear. If you don't know after elements, width is going to be 100%. The height is going to be, again, 100% to make it cover the whole area. The border radius is going to have 4 pixels because in the image we already removed 4 pixels of the radius. We're going to have to do the same for the after element. It's going to be positioned absolute because otherwise it's not going to go on top. From the top it's going to be 0, from the left it's going to be 0. And now for the background to appear, we're going to add a color, which is going to be RGBA 61, 155, 229, and 0.2 opacity. Let's save it. And we can see that we have a overlaying color here. Now let's start coding our JavaScript because our slick elements or our case studies are not looking how it is in the Adobe XD design. So go to our script file. Now we are going to add a new function, and that function is going to start when our document loads. So document period ready, a function with 2 round brackets. Before that last bracket, we're going to add a curly bracket. The case studies. Actually, let me just show you. Let's go to our slick carousel. Let's open their documentation. Scroll down, and we can see how it's being used. So we are basically making a middle ground with the responsive for only one breakpoint, which is 760 pixel. And that's going to be happening in the Meaty query later on as well. So if you want, you can copy this whole part. Let's do that just to make it faster. And put that inside here after the document is ready. Copy it. Now, we're not going to be needing the 480 breakpoint. We also don't need the comments. We also don't need the 600 breakpoint. Remove the comma because this is going to be the only breakpoint for us. The breakpoint is going to be 760 pixels. The settings is going to go, the slides to show is going to be only 1. We're not going to show 3 slides as 1. And we're also going to be removing the dots and infinity value. Remove the comma as well. Actually put the comma back here. Yep. And the slides to scroll is going to be 1. The slides to show is going to be 3. The speed is going to stay 300. The infinity is actually going to be true because we wanted to have infinity scroll. And we're going to actually make the dots not true. We're going to add arrows being true. Now, if we save, the responsive is not going to be we don't have a responsive class, so we're going to have to change it to case studies, because this is in the HTML, we have our case studies being wrapper around our case study items. Now, if we save that, go back to our document, we can see that we have arrows in our latest case studies part, but those arrows are actually false, because we're going to be making our own arrows that we made earlier in our CSS, but we are assigning those to our div that is in the bottom side of our case studies. And how do we do that? We add a new line of code, which is append arrows. Again, everything is in the documentation of the Slick with the $, round brackets, string, hashtag, arrows. So that's the div that is targeting. Put the comma and save it. Now, if you scroll down, we can see that we have arrows on the bottom side of our case studies, and those arrows work perfectly fine. But those are not styled correctly, and the numbers have few issues. So let's go back up and check if we have any misspellings. Actually, we can see in the problems tab, there's already 2 of those. So click on the first one, seeing that it's the opacity is written wrong, and we're missing a semicolon in the bottom of our JavaScript file. Save that and save the CSS as well. Refresh the site. And we can also see that our CSS for our numbers is incorrect. Let's go find the value. So our right is actually 50 pixels, even though it should be 5 pixels. So change that, save, and we can see that's looking a lot nicer now. Let's click the arrows, and they're working fine as well. So let's move on to the footer, the last part of our HTML document. Let's scroll down to the bottom, end our brackets, and start footer. That footer is gonna have all of its text being aligned to the center. All the text is gonna be white, and there's gonna be a huge background image that is in the resources folder. It's gonna be URL, strings, 2 periods, because remember, with 2 periods we go back a folder. The CSS file is in a CSS folder. We have to go back a folder to find the resources folder, because the resources again is not inside the CSS folder. Resources, press enter and choose the footer PNG. Semicolon, the background size is gonna be cover. The background position is gonna be centered and center. It's gonna be repeated by none. It's gonna have the height of 597 pixels. The width is gonna be 100%. And every item inside that is gonna be displayed as a grid element. And they're gonna be aligned to the center. So the wrapper is gonna have also the items displayed as a grid elements. Those are gonna be again aligned to the center, and the wrapper is gonna have a width of 100%. Now, after the wrapper, there's gonna be a P, which is the paragraph tag. It's gonna have the opacity for the whole text being 0.8. The font size is gonna be 1.2 EMs. The padding from the top is gonna be 50 pixels. The max width is gonna be 400 pixels, and the margin is gonna be auto. Now the grid container in the wrapper, in the footer, is gonna be displayed as a grid element. There's gonna be a grid gap applied, which is 80 pixels. Basically, it's the same as a padding. Sorry, I made a misspelling here. Grid gap. And it's gonna be margin from the top of 60 pixels. We can save it and see how far we have progressed right now. We can see that we have our background nicely applied, but now we have to do our social media list. So let's go and do that. After our purple curly bracket, let's type in a footer hyphen list. The footer list, the list elements are gonna be, again, list elements are gonna be displayed inline, so they are not going as a column, they're going as basically rows from the left to the right, not down from the top to the bottom. And padding is gonna be 0 pixels, 8 pixels. And the second element is gonna have a different padding because the YouTube button is a bit larger than the other ones. So the border radius after we are gonna apply it is gonna look off. So we're gonna have to add the second element as well. So colons, nth, child, the second child of the A is gonna have a padding of 13 pixels and a 16 pixels. And I will show you later why. Now moving on, we're gonna type for the A. Let's scroll down a little bit. The font size is gonna be for the links of 1.2 EMs. Color is gonna be white. The border is gonna be 3 pixels, solid and white. The padding is gonna be 13 pixels and 17 pixels. And the border radius is gonna be 100% to make it a circle. We're also gonna be applying a hover effect for our links. Hover, the color is gonna be blue when we hover it. And so basically the font is gonna be blue, the text is gonna be blue. It's gonna have a background of white, and it's gonna have a transition of 0.3 seconds and these. So we can't use our variable here because it's different. And if we save it, and we have all of our social media links done. So going back, I'll just show you what I meant by making this second element. So if we remove it, save it, we can see that our second element is looking a little bit more not circly. I don't know if you can see it, but it definitely is because the icon is more rectangular than square than the other icon. So if you put that back, save it, I think it looks a lot better, and I hope you think that as well. Now that we have all of our mobile styling done, we can move on to the Meaty query, which is for the desktop. So let's put our browser back to the normal size, at least when it hits more than 768 pixels, and start writing our code. So let's make a comment of our main breakpoint, which is happening from 768 pixels, which means that we have done so far a mobile first solution. To start that media, we start with the @ media only screen, and the minimum width is gonna be 768 pixels. So below this code or inside this media query, everything is applied only when the browser hits 768 pixels, because that's what min width means. So if we had a max width, that means everything is applied only until 768 pixels. So basically from the mobile smallest to 768 pixels, but not for the desktop. So let's start making the desktop. Let's make a comment for the header area and write header. This is gonna be positioned absolute. The display is gonna be grid, and the grid elements are gonna be used with the template column with 1 fraction and 2 fractions. The mobile nav inside that is going to be displayed as none because we're hiding the mobile, and we are making the desktop menu appear by using display block. Okay, let's save that. And we can see we have our menu appearing for the desktop just like we wanted to. Now onto the content area. Let's make 2 enters because then we know where that media ends. Let's make a content for the content area. Right for the section. That section is now gonna have the padding initialized because we don't want 10% from the left side and 10% of padding from the right side as we called in the CSS for the mobile. And the at is gonna be desktop full height, and it's gonna have the value of 100 viewport heights. If you don't know what viewport height is, viewport height means that everything inside the browser is being applied from the top to the bottom, so 100% from the viewport height. There's also viewport width, so that means 100% of the viewport width is being covered. Now for the wrapper inside our section, it's gonna be wrapper, and it's gonna have a max width of 1040 pixels and a padding of 50 pixels and 20 pixels. If we save it, and we're not gonna be seeing much of a difference because we also have to do the sections. So let's go forward and write the first section out with the comment of section 1. So that section is gonna have, let me scroll down. That section is gonna have the background image changed into URL 2 periods, resources, landing, normal. So put the semicolons. The background position is gonna be bottom right. The background size is gonna be cover. Inside the section 1, we're gonna have a wrapper that's gonna have a padding of 0 pixels and 10%. Place items is gonna be center and start, and that's working because we have it as a grid element. Text box is gonna have the maximum width of 600 pixels, and the margin top is gonna be initialized. If we save it, we can see that our first section is put into the center and our background is where it should be. Now onto the section. Let's write a comment, section 2. So the second section is gonna have a padding from the top being 200 pixels because we want the content to be padded. The background is gonna be new, so we're gonna add a new background there with the URL of 2 periods, resources, and section 2, semicolon. Background position is gonna be top and right, and we're gonna also have the background size being cover. If we save it, you can see what that did. If we scroll down now, the second section is blending into our first section. Now let's go further and write the second section's text box being padding with 0 pixels and 80 pixels. The background element is gonna be left minus 20%, and the services list is gonna have a display of grid, and those grid template elements are gonna have columns are gonna be 1 fraction, 1 fraction, and 1 fraction. So each of those elements that you see on this mobile view right now is going from left to right, with each being the same height and width. No, the same width as everything else. So if you save it, now you can see that our elements are from the left to the right, each with the same size. Okay, let's go on to the third section. Section 3. The section 3 is going to have a really simple code, and it's only going to have section 3. Inside that section is going to have a text center, and we're going to put the text center back to text align left, because we don't want our text to be centered here in here. So save it, and now it's right on the left side. Onto the footer. The footer, it's going to have a margin from the top being 150 pixels. The wrapper is going to have a max width of 1040 pixels. The margin is going to be auto, and the height is going to be 100%. Let's scroll down to see for our changes. Now, the footer list is also going to have a padding of 0 pixels and 25 pixels. The footer list elements, and only the second one first, is going to have the child 2a have a padding that is different from the each other ones, 17 and 22, and the normal a tags are going to have a font size of 1.8 EMs and a padding of 15 pixels and 22 pixels. Save it. Now let's resize our browser to make room for the changes and see that we have our desktop looking the same as we want it to. Let's check if the arrows work. Those work fine. And the links have a hover. The contact has a hover. The read more has a hover. And everything's perfect. So this is mostly working for example, Firefox and Chrome, but we also want to make few extra changes for example, Mac size and for the Internet Explorer 9 and above. So we're gonna add 2 more @media queries. One of that is gonna be @media screen and min width of 2560 pixels, and the footer is gonna change with the height, because otherwise it's not gonna look good, of 815 pixels. You can't see that if you're not working on a Mac with higher pixels of a width 2560 pixels. So don't worry about that. And the IE workaround, so Internet Explorer workaround, IE 9 plus workaround, media query. That's gonna be @media screen and the min width of 0 and a backslash of 0 and min resolution of plus 72 TPI. Inside that, the header is gonna change from display grid to display Microsoft Flexbox and justify content of space around. The section 2 of the services list is gonna change from display grid to display Microsoft Flexbox and save it. Also, again, you're not gonna see the changes if you're not working on Internet Explorer 9 or above, but this is a workaround that we have to apply to make sure that everything works correctly on every browser and every size. So let's close our Visual Studio because we're not going to be needing that. Close it, and let's check how our website looks. and it's looking fine. Everything's perfect just how it is in Adobe XD.
I see that you have made it to the end of this course. I really hope you enjoyed this and you learned at least something new. Now remember, I have added all the necessary links and files into the project files, and if you're stuck somewhere or getting an error, feel free to contact me as I will do my best to help you out. With that said, if you enjoyed this course, don't forget to spread the word. Have a nice day and happy coding!